in. Now, up front, I'm just going to ask everybody right now at the very end of this, and I'm going to shoot this in the link now. I'm just going to simply ask if everybody can just schedule a quick 10-15 minute call with me, throughout the next week. And basically, I'm just going to ask you 3 straightforward, simple questions. It's so that I can get feedback from this. Believe it or not, the material that we're actually going over today is part of a book that I wrote. And Samantha actually has written part of that book with me. So that's really, really cool. But I'd really love to get some feedback because this book actually is not published yet. So those calls are going to be super quick, 3 straightforward questions. And if you guys have anything for me. So again, those are in the chat. If you can just use those, set those calls up, would really appreciate it, guys. So diving right in. I'm gonna get a little bit vulnerable with everybody here and share some painful truths to just dive right into this. As I'm sharing this story, the reason I'm sharing this is not to make this about me. I want you to start thinking about a moment in your life where you faced a tremendous amount of adversity. Anybody in here have one of those? Everybody's hand should have gone up, right? It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're in New York or if you're in Florida. You're going to face adversity at some point in time, right? So again, the reason I'm sharing this story with you guys is just so that everybody can feel comfortable in an environment of trust and open up that vulnerability. You don't have to share your story, but I do ask that you just jot yours down or start to think about that, okay? Because this is going to be what you'll use kind of as your North Star compass. Everybody cool with that? Awesome. So the story I'm going to share with you is a true story. Again, this is a personal story. It's hard for me to share, but I'm going to dive right into it. This is a moment of adversity. True story. This happened October, almost 5 years ago. I just moved down to Charlotte, North Carolina. I was in the process of opening a 3-way brokerage, right? So what Jeff is doing now. And I was excited. I had money saved up. I was about to buy a house down there. Everything was going well, right? I'm fired up. I get down there and we're about 3 months in. It's myself and 2 good friends of mine that open the brokerage. I'm conducting a training seminar, sales seminar, and I get this call on my phone, which normally I wouldn't answer, right? I'm running a seminar, but I was inclined to answer it. So I answer this call, and on the other end, it's this lady that says, "Hello, your father has passed away." Now, my dad wasn't really a part of my life. So immediately, I had all these emotions that come up. And just out of curiosity, if you were in that situation, right? This is your father, somebody hasn't been in your life, you get this phone call out of the blue. I mean, where would your mind go? I don't know if anybody's experienced something like this, but would this be like feelings of joy?
My mind would be really confused.
Yeah, 100%.
I feel like personally I would want to run out of the room and try to go find that, that person that, let me know and be there. But at the same time, him not being in your life or my life at that point, I'd feel like I'm just going to bury it and move on and then deal with it later.
Yeah, man. All valid points. Good.
Another thing also, I would question, is it legit or is it bullshit?
Absolutely. Right. So she faced me with 2 options in this scenario. She said, you got 2 choices. One choice is you do absolutely nothing and just leave the scenario as is. Unfortunately, he had a wife and 2 kids, and they would have had to sell the house to pay for everything. Jeff, you know how important it is to have burial plans and insurance, right? He didn't have anything in place, and he just transitioned jobs. He lost his pension and everything. He owed so much debt, they had nothing. That was option 1, right? Do nothing about it. Option 2 was come out of pocket and pay for these expenses. So I put every single penny I had into paying for it. It was over 20 grand. And the first reaction I had was, and excuse my language for a minute, but the first reaction I had was, fuck this guy. He's never been here for me. All I've ever gained from him is pain. Why would I put my neck on the line for somebody like that? Right? Moment of adversity. But the more I processed this scenario, what I realized was the person that was going to have to live with this decision was who? Was me. I was the person that had to live with that decision. Nobody else. So I did what I thought was right in that moment. I gave them every single penny. I lost everything I had. I lost my business. I lost the place I lived in. and I started living in a Nissan Altima with my dog Coda, who's with me to this day. We moved up to Chicago, Illinois, lived in the polar vortex, no heat in the car, no food. I was working 2 jobs full time. It was rough. My point is, it's not really about what happened to me. It's not really about the highs and the lows. It was a moment of adversity. And I know for a fact, every single person on this call has faced plenty of moments of adversity. So I'd ask you to grab your moment. And as you're capturing this thought, I want to share a point with you. When something like this occurs in your life, and you can think about yours right now, there's 2 things that will happen. Number 1, deflation. Number 2, victimization. Deflation is, man, I could hit high after high after high. I could be doing really well personally and professionally. Then I get hit with adversity or a crisis and I lose all momentum. I drop down to the bottom. I'm completely deflated, right? The victimization side is, instead of looking for the solution, we look for the origin of the problem, or we point the finger at somewhere else. That's the victimization. And I guarantee we've all done that. So real quick, does anybody have a moment of adversity? You don't have to share it right now, but just give me a thumbs up. Do you have your own moment of adversity you can use as a reference point? Awesome. Does anybody want to share theirs? Go for it. Go for it.
Well, right now I'm facing a moment of adversity because work is not where I want it to be. And so I have to rethink my strategy in terms of getting more people. And as far as I'm concerned, fuck the economy. I don't care if we're about to go through recession, the bills, and the companies that I have to pay money to don't give a shit about that. So it's been very humbling. And considering a lot of times I'm harder on myself than an 8-year-old on Viagra, it's hard to sit there and to, not beat myself up, and file a restraining order against myself. So sometimes I'm definitely my own worst enemy, and having, anxiety and depression doesn't help either. So, I'm fighting myself, a lot of times, but also I'm also relishing in the fact I have the victories. So the old Matt would sit there and squander the successes and the achievements. The newer version of Matt does not do that. So
Right,
yes.
right.
So
I'm going to stop you for a sec, Matt. So
Okay.
so the moment of adversity is that you're currently facing is the work, right?
correct, or lack thereof.
Beautiful. Excellent. Does anybody else want to share theirs? And you don't have to go super, super in depth, because we're going to break these apart more. It's really just kind of surface level. And you don't have to, by the way. We'll
Yeah,
use this. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go. So I started my career at the beginning of 2022, leaving supply chain and operations, a 6-figure role, to be 100% commission-based broker. Met a girl who was the love of my life. She puts herself out there on social media. Everybody from my hometown and my family rejected her because they're real, kind of buttoned up, conservative Irish Catholic people, and friends just being kind of judgmental, and I feel like jealous to a degree. So that added complexity to where it was kind of a her or them choice. And over time, it got worse. A lot of my nest egg went by the wayside too, because of a crypto coin investment that I was relying on that went kaput because my mom actually lost it all. And I had to go on a draw and lose relationships with like half the people that I kind of grew up with and knew. So the adversity that I was dealing with is kind of feeling isolated, feeling like I had to make a choice, not having any money, having to go on a draw and figure out ways I'm going to grind myself out while moving to a new state and, proposing to the woman that I love. So I'm kind of in the thick of it right now, but I realize that if I give up, then I'm only fucking over myself,
Right. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing, guys, both of you. All right. So G, I know you put your hand up. I might come back to you in a minute. If it's all right with you, I'm going to keep on rolling, and we're going to have opportunities to share in these particular moments. So I just want to say to both of you that did share, thank you guys so much. Take your own example and let's start working through this. Okay. This is an equation. I can't take credit for this, although some of this is proprietary, but a lot of this is been proven. It's a system. This is coming directly from Harvard. Okay. So the way that we want to think about this, and we talked about this before, what happened in your moment of adversity? Matt, when you share about yours with work, Jeff, because you had a couple there, Jeff. So when you share those moments, right? When we think about those things, was there an element of deflation or victimization, right? Because we all go through it. It's natural. It's human nature. So when you think about those things, what we're really saying is, how are you viewing the moment? Because if it already happened, if we know we're going to face the adversity and it's going to occur, why would you not get something out of it? So if it's going to happen, or if it already has happened, we want to change the way we view it. So there are 4 lenses really that we're going to view these moments through. And this is a proven method to help you shift from that negative side to getting actual results in the positivity. So take the negative emotions and feelings of your moment of adversity, right? Lack of income. Maybe there's a lack of confidence. Maybe you had to burn some relationships, burn some bridges. Maybe you're starting from ground zero or rock bottom. Whatever that is, take that moment and let's start running it through these lenses. Everybody with me? Awesome. So number 1 is control. Control basically says when something first occurs, where is your mind going? Again, this is the victimization piece. Are you pointing your finger? Are you looking for the origin of the problem? This happened because of this. Or are you putting your energy in what you can control from here? Samantha, you shared how you just have received a managerial role. That's absolutely amazing. When you think about this, what's within your control, right? Whatever it took for you to get to this point, it worked, obviously, and that's amazing. Now that you have this point, you're in a different position. You got to worry about people that are on your team, right? You're a manager. So now what's within your control? If Joe on your team doesn't make sales tomorrow, you can't control that. But what you could control is sitting down with Joe and practicing rebuttals. Boom, that's within your control. So how are you looking at the moment? And Matt, I want you to hear me on this one, brother. Concentrating energy and effort towards things that we cannot control is toxic and unproductive, right? Because when you focus on what you don't want, we said this the other day on Tuesday, right, Matt? What you resist persists through manifestation. When you put your energy on what you do not want, you're attracting more of that because that's where your energy is flowing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, dude, I'll hear that saying in my sleep tonight. So thanks.
I got you. So again, really quickly for everybody, and this is just for you. You don't have to share this, although you can. Take your moment of adversity that you wrote down or thought of in your head, and in this moment, write how you interpreted what you could control. Did you focus your energy on effort on what you lost or what you did not want or what was negative? Or did you focus on what was positive or what you did want or what you could control? Right? And this is for you. This is just for you. This is a moment of self-awareness. So just jot that down real quick. And if anybody would like to share, please do. Would love to hear it. Everybody good on this? Does anybody want to share how you viewed it?
It's interesting to me is I kind of on both sides of it. The adversity was when I was back with H&R Block months before I left. On my review, my boss called me a liar. So my new boss was giving me the review. I had 15 years, extraordinary career, the youngest regional director. I was doing really well. They called me a liar. And I felt like you said first thing in my mind was, why did that HR person say that? Where did they get that? What did I miss that they misunderstood or whatever? Because that's not me.
Right.
But then on the flip side, when my new boss told me, well, would you like to do the work to validate it and get it changed? And I feel like I was being used, her against the old boss to kind of have a power struggle, and I was like, you know what? I'm starting over with you. I'll make it up. I'm resilient. And then from then, because I didn't stand up for myself, it was just a downward spiral that this new boss didn't trust me. So it was like, I lost my energy. I lost my control. It was worst time of my life.
Powerful self-awareness though. You know, it's so
It's haunted me for 20 years.
yeah, I
I'm
believe
still,
it.
I'm still in that car where I had the review over the phone with my new boss.
100% believe it. You know, and does anybody else have a scenario they like to share? Thank you for sharing, by the way, Kevin. I think that, you know, again, the whole concept of step one is like, in the moment, crisis occurs, adversity occurs, whatever you want to call it, it happens. Where does your mind go? Because naturally, as humans, the emotion rises, and as soon as that emotion rises, we are not thinking logically, right? That's where the fingers point, and that's where we're saying who did this and who did what. But that doesn't help us. You know, like Jeff, in your moment of vulnerability where you shared your truth with us, focusing on what those people said or thought or felt or did, it's out of your control, right? You know, you have this beautiful blossoming in relationship in front of you, a new career and a move. Those are incredible things, right? So if you focus the energy there on what is coming and what's beautiful and good in your life, you're going to get more of that back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I definitely focused a lot more on how I could make these people come to terms with what they've done and how they can make amends. And a lot of it was thrown back in my face. And I can think of like the countless hours that I was on the phone with people, you know, basically fighting with them and bickering and driving myself into the ground more versus just breaking away and being okay with that. But at the same time, breaking away and losing all those relationships are hard for me. So ultimately in the future, I hope that we could find peace. But right now, like you said, I got to focus on what's in front of me, you know, or else I'm going to, you know, implode.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's tough. It's tough. You're in a tough situation, but guess what? Imagine how much stronger you are going to be as an individual. Imagine how much stronger your relationship is going to be once you both get through this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's where you focus the effort and energy. It's to say, man, if we could get through all of that before we were married, now that we are building this foundation and we're setting up the right way, imagine how strong we're going to be 2 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the beauty in it. So I love this, guys. Great conversation. Just keeping it rolling. The impact side, this one's possibly the most difficult for most people, because again, what happens is this is where the emotion is high, right? The moment occurred, we want to focus our efforts and energy on what we can control. But when we look at the impact side of things, it's to say, how do we actually avoid the emotion or the reactions or the patterns that we've built to defend ourselves for so many years? You know, the best way to do this, by the way, is asking yourselves the right questions, right? Like when I think about Kevin's scenario that he shared, if somebody called you a liar, and I know you personally, so I know that that's not true, but if somebody called you that, when we think about impact in this section, what's the right question? And you were on that path, right? Why would that person say that? You can't control it though. So you start to look for the opportunity, and that's the most powerful place. And really that starts with the words, right? When we think about the results, it all starts with the first step, and that's the words that we use. The words we use lead to our thoughts, which lead to our actions, which give us our results. So when you're in that moment and the emotions start to get really high, the best thing you can do is step back and start asking yourself the right questions. I'll give you another example and then we'll move on. When I was searching for a home to buy, I found this home. I thought it was the perfect fit. I was working full time, doing what Jeff's doing now. And I worked a 12-hour day, drove 4.5 hours away from my house with this list in hand, and drove around from house to house for 6 hours until I found the right house. I was all in. I found this house. I was so pumped. And I stayed the night in my car, and I woke up the next morning so I could go put an offer in. And I drove in to go put this offer in person. And as soon as I said the words, they said, "We just received an offer 5 minutes before you put in." I was devastated. I was like, man, I did all this and I lost the home? You're kidding me. I ended up buying a house 3 miles down the road. And one day I went back to look at that house that I was originally going to buy that I lost. When I got there, there was an old man in the driveway. I started talking to him and I told him that I wanted to buy this house. And he told me that 2 weeks after they bought the house, their well went up. They had to pay 80 grand to put a new well in. So in that moment, I was devastated. I lost the house of my dreams. But a few weeks passed and I found out that it was a blessing in disguise because the well went up and I would have had to come out 80 grand into that house right off the bat. So my point is, when you're in that moment, ask yourself the right questions. In that moment, it was really easy for me to say, oh, woe was me. Why me? Why am I hitting this wall? Why can't I get the house? The better thing to do is shift the questions and say, what's the opportunity here? How can I use this for other people? Same scenario, different question, different outcome.
Keegan, all I have to say to what you just commented on was, oh, well.
On the house side, right?
So, or it wasn't the wishing well.
Yeah.
Or anyway, I'm done with snide remarks for now. So
no, but I mean, the point is the first thing, and I know we all do this. I do this. Everybody on this call does this. A tough moment happens and emotion rises. It's human nature. You can't tell me it doesn't happen to you. So when that emotion rises, what are you doing? Instead of pointing the finger and placing blame, ask yourself better questions. Jeff, did I really need that person in my life? Matt, am I taking the right approach right now for my business? Samantha, how can I use this position to impact the lives of other people? Like, these are the right type of questions that you might not categorize that as a moment of adversity, Samantha, for you particularly. But I mean, in these moments, what are the questions you're asking yourself? What's the opportunity, right? So anyway, if you take that example from above, that crisis or moment of adversity, think about how you can use this to impact other people. Like, I'll ask you directly, Kevin. In that scenario where you went through that situation, how were you able to use that later in life or in business to help somebody else? I mean, for example, right? You were given, let's put it like this. You were given a label untruly, and you had to battle against that. Who has had that in your life recently that you've been able to support because you went through something like this? It's different, I get, with your daughter, but similar context, right?
I can see that now. Yeah. I guess there's a lot of times I've made me a better leader to know that when I accuse somebody or have something that's a hard conversation, I need to make sure I have all my ducks in a row to validate why I say what I'm saying, because it really wasn't that way for me.
Absolutely. Right. And again, we got a visitor. And again, that comes back to that impact piece. So, and by the way, this is just for everybody on the call. There's 3 nuggets I find, because this really came back to questions. 3 really powerful questions, if you're taking notes. Is number 1 is, what is the opportunity here? Right? What's the opportunity here? How can I use this to impact others? And what can I learn from this? So if you go through a moment of adversity and you're in step 2 and you're focusing on what are the right questions to ask myself, they're always, what is the opportunity here? How can I use this to impact others? And what can I learn from this? Right? And then when you ask yourself those questions, instead of, why did they say that? Why did they do that? You're empowering yourself. The scenario didn't change, but you did. And that's where the power is.
So it's all perception and perspective.
100%. I love that, right? And that comes back to the words you use lead to your thoughts, lead to your actions, lead to your results. So the starting point is, when you know that emotion's heightening, what is the best thing you can do? Ask yourself better questions. And it's a battle, right? Because the emotion's high. But when you ask the right questions, you get better results. Breadth. So this is the third part to going through this process. So how are you viewing the underlying cause of the crisis? Are you letting this affect other areas? Because back to Matt's point, we all know that career and income are tied together, but they are 2 separate things. So how is the career side affecting the income side? Are you letting that worry or fear or doubt creep into other spaces? this is really the biggest part of breath. Is this circumstantial or is this recurring? In other words, can this be isolated and handled, or is this something that keeps showing up in my life? Okay? Because if it keeps showing up in your life, it's a habit or a pattern. If it's circumstantial, it can be beat and moved on, and you just keep on going. But if it's something that keeps coming up, it's something deeper, and we need to reevaluate the approach, right? And again, when we're talking about this, we're really specifically isolating the emotion, because we have this emotional reaction because we are triggered by something. Our trigger does not define who we are as a person. In order to get past it, we have to get to the root of it, though. We have to get to the root of where that emotion is coming from. Why is that? Why did what they say bothered me so? Why did that bother me so much? Where does that derive from? And often it's childhood, by the way. Just to let you know, it's often a memory from our past and childhood. So this is a really powerful exercise, but once you actually isolate that emotion, the best thing you can do is just sit and focus on it. Why do I have this boxed emotion? Let me release this boxed emotion. Where does this come from? How do you get good at anything? You do it over and over and over again. This isn't something you're going to do one time and just crush it every time. You got to do this constantly, right? Any questions or thoughts on this part, on the breadth? This really comes back to what Matt said with perspective and perception, right? How are you viewing the moment? And that is really, again, isolating that emotion.
So it's almost like the psychological version of Drake. We started from the bottom, now we're here.
I love it, Matt. I love it. Yeah, man. And to that point, starting from the bottom, like, you got to get to that root. You got to get to the root, because here's the thing. If you don't get to the original memory that you've created that's supporting this emotional reaction, you are going to keep doing it for your whole life. If you don't stop and face it, it will keep coming up. And guess what? If you start doing this when you're 20 and you're still doing this when you're 50, it's 10 times harder to break in your 50s or 60s than it is right now. So this is the best time to stop these patterns, right? And that is getting to the root. So again, when we talk about the first step, when we talk about the control, what are we focusing on? Where does your mind go first? Are you focusing on what's within your control? When we talk about the impact, focusing on the emotional reaction. The emotions are getting high. Can I isolate that emotion? Now that I have isolated that emotion, step 3 is, what am I going to do to get to the root of it? Where does this actually come from? Now that you can give energy and isolate where it comes from, the fourth part is duration. And the whole reason that everybody's on this call today is because you want to be a better version of yourself. And I appreciate that you are here. That duration piece tells me everybody on this call wants to be successful. And here's the fourth step to being successful in a crisis. You got to get over it. Anything that's good, bad, or in between does not last. Les Brown said, you are either in a storm, you are headed into a storm, or you are leaving a storm. But a storm's always lurking around the corner. It's always there. So how long are you going to let this impact you? If you're having the same conversation and dilemmas 6 months from now, have you actually grown from it at all? So the quicker you face this event, the quicker you move on. Did you ever have a tough conversation with a sibling or a parent or a teacher or a coworker or somebody, and you just dreaded it for so long and you're like, I'll do it. And a week goes by, and then 2 weeks go by, and then a month goes by, and before you know it, you're like, man, I just don't want to have that conversation anymore. But if you just go and have the conversation, how much better you feel? The best thing you can do is just face it right now and move on. It is absolutely better to act now and fail than it is to do nothing at all. You can't convince me otherwise.
Keegan, can I throw something in there and offer a meaningful Matt morsel, and not because of the picture in my background? One of the things that I'm listening to what Keegan says, and it's something that Keegan and I have spoken about on a multitude of occasions, is how important reflection is in your life. And a lot of what he's saying, or what I'm hearing here from him, is the ability to reflect in these different nuances on these different levels for these different tasks that are at hand. All that correlates or goes back to reflection of some kind. And if you do that on a regular basis or a daily basis, like I do, I think that will help you get to where you ultimately want to be in your life.
Thank you, brother. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. And I like how you put that. These are almost like different levels of reflection, right? It's a self-reflection, which does require a lot of practice. And that's what we're getting to here. But if you think about your moment of adversity, whatever you wrote down, how long did you let it affect you? You know, what would your life look like if the moment that you wrote down or the moment you're facing now, how would your life look if it's the same scenario 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years, 20 years from now? You are supporting a pattern of a younger you. That's what it comes down to. The faster you face this moment, the faster you get through it. The more often you do this, the better you get at doing this. All right. So any questions before we move into the last part and wrap up?
You say when you keep facing it, like I'm not called a liar. I'm not called a liar. So that only happened that once, right? So that's not what I'm reoccurring facing.
Exactly. So that's when we come back up to the breadth. Is this an isolated moment or is this continuing to happen? And so in that particular scenario for you, Kevin, you wouldn't need to go to that next step, right? You would really only need to focus on 1, 2, and 3 because this is circumstantial. This isn't something that's continuing to happen in your life. The 4th step is duration.
What I'm seeing now, the duration though, is my reaction to that. If I look at the questioning of my integrity and I take it now when I'm questioning my integrity and I don't stand up for myself.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's the pattern or habit, right?
So that's what I see as reoccurring.
Exactly. So it's a different form. So that instance that provoked this was circumstantial, but the pattern or habit that you've reinforced because of that event has been habitual. It just comes up in different forms. Right? But that's a great point. That's a great point, Kevin. You know, again, you got to realize, guys, that sometimes this might only occur one time in our life, but are you reinforcing or supporting the pattern because of that one event? You know, I know that I've done that. Absolutely, I can admit that I've done that in scenarios, right? Great point. Any other points or thoughts or questions before we kind of shift gears a little bit?
I feel like one thing that I could add to this, if anybody has dealt with this, that's gone to the duration point, and you've let it affect you, and maybe you've used different things to bury that, whether it's substances or vices or anything else. You know, I've just learned from my own personal experience that those just lead to diminishing returns.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, they will make you feel good for a period of time, and then it'll just exacerbate the issue. So my response to that has been a couple different things. You know, letting go is a big thing. And the other one is finding more positive ways to, you know, channel this stress and anxiety and depression, such as meditation. I got a couple producers that are big into it. And I feel like, honestly, that's like one of the most under monetized like forms of self-reflection and betterment. I'm surprised not many people have like found a way to monetize on it, but I've done it for about a month now. It makes me feel a ton better. And honestly, faith, you know, regardless of your religion, you know, being that, you know, we all come from somewhere, and there is a greater power that's kind of orchestrating this. I feel like that has been another thing where like it kind of helps you trust the process a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing, man. You know, and to Jeff's point, I really love how you tied those ones together in particular. It's all integrated, isn't it? Like
Mm-hmm.
you know, if you're doing really well at work, you probably have really good relationships. And if you have good relationships, you're probably doing really well in your health. It's like what Jim Rohn said. He said, if you're not going to eat the apple, you're not going to take a walk around the block. And if you're not going to take the walk around the block, you're not going to read the book. And if you're not going to read the book, you're not going to wake up early. And if you're not going to wake up early, you're not going to do the exercise. Everything we do is connected, it's integrated. You know, so to Jeff's point, what you really emphasize there is like your morning routine, right? Like those, if you can do those things of spirituality in the morning and the health in the morning and the personal development in the morning, you're going to have the best day possible because you're already at a high level of output, right? Great points though. Thank you for sharing. And another thing you said that I really loved is like in today's day and age, we are so systematically conditioned to look for the short-term fix. You know, people put blanket fixes over everything, and that's like the worst thing you can do, because if you look for a short-term fix, it's not that bad now, but long-term, it's more detrimental. And that's what Jeff's saying. He's like, man, it does suck right now, but I'm facing it. And because I'm facing it and getting through it right now, even though it's painful right now, I know long-term it's the best play. And so it's almost like this mental battle that you have to have with yourself, right? Excellent points. So, and kind of to Matt's point, the top part, everything we just went over, that's more of a reflective stance. All of those things are not necessarily going to get us to the other side of resilience. That is our first step to conquer the adversity. If you do those steps, you're in a better mind state, and now you're going to crush that adversity. But if you don't do those things, if you don't know what the origin is, if you don't look at what you actually have control over, you can't even get to the next step. So chronologically, you got to do those first 4 things, and then we move into this 3-step process, okay? And I'm going to go through this really quickly. Again, that's why I sent this to everybody. If you have questions, let me know, okay? You'll take the same 4 categories we've been talking about this whole time, right? Control, impact, breadth, and duration. Those are the 4 categories. Now you're going to run those through a 3-step process. Specify, visualize, and collaborate. Giuseppe, I know that you're in the transition phase. So you and I can talk about this, but somebody like Jeff, man, you can do this with your team very effectively. Samantha, you could do the same thing because you're like in a sales role, right? Man, you can do this 3-step process with your team. This is actually specifically a managerial tool. Okay. So this is pretty cool stuff. You will take the moment. Let's say your person didn't hit their sales goal for the month. That's just a random example off the cusp. Salesperson, producer didn't hit your goal. Let's look at control. Okay, Joe, I realize you didn't hit your goal, man. Let's break this down to what we can control. Okay. When we think about this is saying, what do we actually believe we have control over? Do we believe that we can go out the next week and make the sales? Or do we believe we don't have the skills? Or maybe we don't believe we can handle the rejection or the rebuttal? What is it? So specify, what aspects can I directly impact or influence? What would someone I admire do in this situation? Who else could help me? Who do I know that has had a similar experience to this? Right? That's within our control. And again, remember, this is the questions. These are the right questions to ask ourselves. And that goes back to the impact part. Again, when we get to the impact side, we allow the emotion to heighten and we become defensive. And when we're defensive, we're not actually looking for solutions. We're not actually getting to the result. We're just focusing on the problem. When we focus on that powerlessness, we don't get ahead, you know? So again, on impact, how can I position myself to make the most positive impact? What might my positive efforts look like upon completion, right? We use that for your example, Jeff. What is this going to look like once I get through all this muck? Collaborate. If people or environment are holding me back, how can I shift these? Do I need to change the people I'm around, my circle of influence? Maybe I need a new environment. Maybe I need to move to Florida, right? Breadth. So if we hit a setback, what are we actually doing in that moment? Are we trying to limit the damage, or are we focusing on capitalizing on the output? So again, these 3 questions. What is within my control to reduce this in the future? What strength and skills can I develop from this moment? What can be done independently and collectively to transform this into opportunity? How can I make this an opportunity, right? And then the last one, guys, duration. So Sometimes these feel like they have no end. Kevin, you said this has been running through your head for 20 years, right? Recurring turmoil in the face of heightened emotion. Those types of questions, like when will this stop? Why did this happen to me? Who started this? They get away from your strength. They limit you in your own power, right? So what is it going to look like when I get through this? That's a better question. What can I do immediately to move in the right direction? What support systems can help me through this process? All powerful questions. Powerful questions. So, any thoughts on that last part?
Reminds me of the Daniel Bedingfield song. Gotta get through this. That was a good song.
It was. So guys, when you think about this, and let's just do this one last time. So you got two parts here, right? Part one is the 4 steps we talked about. You go through a moment of adversity. What can you control? Where are your emotions going? Is this isolated or circumstantial? And how long is this going to last? Right? That's the self-reflective piece. Now that I've reflected on it and I know how it happened, I want to actually process this and get through it. So you take each of those 4 pieces and you just ask yourself the better question through specificity, visualization, and collaboration. So each step, and again, to Kevin's point, you might not need all 4 steps. You might hit step 3 and be good. A lot of information. What questions, comments, thoughts, concerns do you guys have? Talk to me.
Overall, I thought this was great. I think a lot of people deal with adversity and they don't have a systematic way of addressing it and dealing with it and internalizing what's going on and why you're reacting a type of way. And I think this really broke that down, to be able to mentally process everything that's going on and really find the root, like you said, deal with that root and break the cycle. And I think that's my biggest takeaway, because when I look at what I'm dealing with, I have an emotional cycle to care about what people think of me and think about what I'm doing. And at the end of the day, all that really matters is what I think about what I'm doing and, what my partner thinks about what I'm doing. And yeah, it would be great to have the approval and the love and support of everybody around me. But, if they want to make their perception of what we're doing their problem, then that's their problem. It's not my problem.
That's right. I love it, man. Excellent. Excellent.
I have a comment for Jeff. Just to throw it out there from a northern perspective. Opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one. And so sometimes in life, you have to pull an Elsa from Frozen and just let it go. So somebody, at some point, everybody pulls a Cyndi Lauper and shows their true colors. And so you can't hide behind a facade forever. And people are truly your friends. They're there through the positive and negative, and not just when it's convenient for them. The other thing I'll mention as well is this. I think it was Jeffrey Keegan who mentioned about the short attention span and devices. I think it was you, Jeff, that said that. And so the one thing I'll say, as much as I love and despise it, technology has shortened our attention span as humans. And in fact, humans now have worse of attention span than a goldfish. So as a species, we have now floundered. So just want to throw it out there to everybody.
Matt, I love your references. I just got to say.
Oh, sure, dude.
Fantastic.
Well, I have a very interesting analogy for everybody. You may forget somebody's name, you may forget their face, but you usually won't forget how they treated you, more importantly, how they made you feel.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
And a woman, to be, politically correct.
Sorry, guys. I spilled water everywhere, and it's on my computer. I had to jump on that real quick.
That is not good.
Yeah, no, not good.
Well, we have somebody on the phone that could probably help you.
Yes, but
that's true.
I can't plug a Terminator and put my hand through the screen yet, but that's coming. So,
all right, guys. So I'm gonna pull this back in. We're gonna run with this. So, any other things that stood out to you guys, or anything that you would like to share before we close out?
My biggest takeaway here was just like remaining positive, looking for the positive. Like, we're always going to have negative thoughts that come up. We're human, it's natural. But like refocusing on the positive and what can I control in this situation? What can I learn? And like just focusing on that. You know, finding gratitude in even the smallest things.
I love that you say this because you know, obviously you and I have a relationship and I know your story and it's just so beautiful. It's like, man, if we all know that we're going to go through some bullshit, right? We know it's going to happen. It's inevitable. Every person on this call has been through some and you're going to go through more. Why would you not empower yourself through it? You know, it's going to show up. You know, it's not going to be fun. Why not get a reward from it? You know, why not use that as a learning tool? Learn about yourself, learn about somebody else, you know, learn a technique. Maybe you can impact somebody else's life, whatever it is. But I love that. So I just want to say thank you guys so much for jumping on this call today. I'm going to shoot 2 links into the chat real quick. One is the next webinar. So there's another one next month. It's the last Thursday of the month, completely free. All you got to do is show up. That one's on the law of attraction. If you want to attract anything into your life, I'm telling you, this freaking works. And I say this, and this is just for people in the call. This is not about boasting or bragging or anything at all of that nature. I started by telling you guys where I started out 4.5 years ago, right? I just bought my 3rd vehicle paid in full, one of my dream vehicles, the house of my dreams, and the woman of my dreams. So, you know, to go from that place of not having it, having your back up against the wall, nobody to turn to, no reason to keep moving forward. And then just 4 years later to have everything that you possibly want, it's out there. But how are you viewing the situation? Are you letting that moment in the past hold you captive and hold you down? Or are you allowing that same exact scenario to make you a better version of you? Because both are out there for you. It's your choice. You just got to do it, right? So go through this. If you have questions, let me know. Like I said, I just shot that link into the chat. That is for the next webinar, a month away. All I got to do is show up. And then again, I just respectfully ask if everybody could just set up a quick 15-minute call. I just shot the link for that. I just have 3 quick questions because, again, I'm taking this directly from my book, so I'd like to make this as good as possible. I'd really love to just pick your guys' brains and kind of see what your feedback is. It's real quick. So any other last-minute questions, thoughts, concerns, or snide remarks before we close out?
Snide remarks. You mentioned about 2 links. Are there any Zeldas?
I don't have any Zeldas, Matt. Not today.
But you have linked though. Is it a link of the past? Is it you know, the original link?
You're a monster. Anyone else?
Yeah, I definitely wanted to say I'm very interested in the law of attraction. I've been listening to a lot about Bob Proctor, Earl Nightingale. Yes. You know, definitely hearing what they have to say about that. I know it has a lot of truth to it. So yeah, I'm definitely interested in that. And also love what you said about perspective. That definitely changes the situation, you know, could turn it into a positive.
100%. Awesome. Thank you, Giuseppe.
Yep.
I have trouble with cheese sometimes. Anybody else?
Yeah, basically Giuseppe wants to avoid the agita.
I love it, guys. All right, so I'm going to shoot this recording to everybody. If you have questions for me, let me know. If you want to run through that document, I'd be happy to jump on a quick call with anybody. And I look forward to speaking with you guys soon. Go enjoy your weekend and be safe. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.